Welcome back. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Call in 448-922-2703. Get you involved in the conversation. We're still here talking about the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers' 5th Annual Race Matters Seminar taking place in Montgomery, Alabama, September 7th and 8th. If you are a lawyer who needs some CLE credits, go to nacdl.org, register, and we'll meet you all down there. Now, when we were down there for the Selma to Montgomery March earlier this year with Reverend Jackson, I found some nice restaurants down there, found some cool places to hang out. So if y'all see me down there in Montgomery, I can show you some things there. I'm a local. I'm a local down there now. I'm known in them streets in the Gump. They know me now. Still with us, we have from the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, Ms. Jumana Musa, and also from the Douglas Memorial Baptist Church, Senior Vice President of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Reverend Attorney Dr. S. Todd Yeary. Todd, so we were talking a little bit before the break. What is it? What role do lawyers have in this modern civil rights movement? Because, as I said, a lot of people think that it's just showing up, doing a press conference, then collecting a couple checks. And that's what it means to be a civil rights lawyer in 2022. What's the real role that lawyers hold in trying to break down this system?
Well, that's a big question. So let's unpack it a little bit. During the break, I was listening to Congresswoman Lucy McBath's ad or commercial about her work and being the mother of Jordan Davis. And as she tells the story about how her son was killed for playing loud music, Sister Jemana's point before the break about how Black bodies are policed, are actually managed, controlled, is part of that big discussion. And growing out of that is, remember, the notion of protect and serve is really embedded in protecting white property and serving white interests. So let's be real clear that policing in the North was property driven. Policing in the South was slave catchers. So we've got this history that's deeply embedded. And so the first thing that lawyers bring who do this work is a historical awareness about how we actually got here. This did not happen in a vacuum. It is actually the system operating as it was designed. And as we continue to make progress, there are modifications and adjustments that force us to continue to protect the rights, the interests, the very persons of Black bodies. And so, as we all learned in law school, we start with that discussion and that mantra of late Charles Hamilton Houston, who said that if Black lawyers are either going to be social engineers or social parasites. And so Black lawyering is about engineering a society that affirms the human dignity of Black bodies in ways where our value is not diminished simply because we are viewed to be out of place. And if we don't pay attention to that, I think we find ourselves in this tension that Professor Cheryl Harris captures when in her seminal journal article, Whiteness as Property.
Governor Ron DeSantis wants you to think he's a big, strong military man who's going to attack the woke agenda. But in reality, he's just attacking.
It is enforceable. Means that Black lawyers have to dismantle, literally, a system of supremacy that has been built on a privilege not established by any rule other than the ability to enforce it by lethality, if absolutely necessary. So when Sister Jemana lays that out, we have three fronts, and I think these are serious because it's not just lawyers, it's when we do kind of civil rights activism writ large. First, lawyers do litigation, right? We have to fight it out in the courts, protecting the interests. Very often it is coming up with test cases that push the application of the law beyond its current constraints. Then there's legislation. Black lawyers have to be in the spaces where laws are being made to make sure that the goodwill that starts the conversation gets codified when the legislation is actually signed. So we have to be part of that advocacy or lobbying process, if you will. And then the third is the agitation. Black lawyers very often protect the interest of protest to be able to allow the people to have their voices heard and their interests raised in public dissent. And so when we think about these moving pieces, most of what I just shared doesn't come with any check. What it comes with is the value proposition that it is too important proposal for us to protect the interest of Black folks, literally. I mean it every day. When we go into these courtrooms and we see how we still have pretextual stops in the age of decriminalization and legalization of marijuana, now you can still smell it, pull somebody over and be able to look in their car if you can't necessarily search their person. We are still fighting these notions of incrementalism that says somehow or other we're making progress when that progress does not always manifest itself in the legal outcomes that very often hinder and hamper the progress of our people.
And on that note, because I think as both of you have mentioned, we've been marching and protesting for substantive criminal justice reform. I think the oldest one that I found was from the 1830s, when you had free men and women who were marching and protesting for an end to over criminalization. Along those lines, what do you think it will take for there actually to be the type of broad-based policy changes that would result in this no longer being the type of issue that it is? Because we've seen everything from gay marriage, which used to be the most taboo thing in American politics, now is ho-hum and mundane. But for some reason, when it comes to the policing of Black bodies, that remains to be that intransigent point that America refuses to budge on. I'll go to you first, Reverend Yeary, and then to you, Attorney Musa, after the break. But Reverend Yeary, what do you think it will take to finally get America on board with just not beating and killing Black folks so often?
Well, we have to continue to hold the mirror up for America to see its own reflection. We have to demythologize the negative images associated with Blackness across a range of things, right? It doesn't even come down to appearance anymore. Remember the seminal civil rights case that transitioned us from the era of Dred Scott into separate but equal was Plessy v. Ferguson. Homer Plessy was not a dark-skinned Black man. As a matter of fact, he passed. He was passing as white until he identified himself as a Black man by virtue of the definition of the one-drop rule, if you will, at that time. That's when he began to experience the pushback for encroaching upon white interest and white privilege. And so we have to continue to push this envelope about this fiction of race, that somehow or other one skin complexion gets automatic consideration and the other complexion gets automatic suspicion.
All right, after the break, I'm going to come to you, Attorney Musa, on this same topic. And I kind of want to get your opinion on what needs to change, but also why it's so difficult for us to have these conversations in a real way. Because what we've seen in the past couple years is that the other side has kind of changed their way of articulating their opposition. And instead of simply saying, well, look, these people are violent criminals and we have to treat them this way. Now they've started to co-opt the language of social justice. They've started to co-opt the conceptualization of freedom and equality and turn that against the people who are actually fighting for real freedom and equality. If you notice, every single time you're in a discussion with conservatives, they start bringing up, well, Dr. King said, and they will say the exact same one line, that I believe in the content of character, not the complexion of skin. They act like that's the entire speech. They really think that the entire 16-minute long, 1,600-word I have a dream speech, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, can be summarized in that one line. And they use that whenever it comes to any type of race-based changes that would impact and stop the level of discrimination we see in our society, whether that be in public education or whether that be in the criminal legal system, whether that be in housing or any other format. They simply put, now have changed the discussion to be that any race-positive actions, as Senator O'Connor talked about, that are used to reverse previous actions that discriminate against a community, well, now that is the discriminatory act in itself. And I do think that in the next term, we will see a Supreme Court decision that enshrines that in law, making it illegal to have any sort of race based programs for economic development, for education, any affirmative action programs, any efforts to reduce police brutality in black communities. Those will all be outlawed, I predict, within the next year, based on our Supreme Court. So I want to get your take on that. That very, very long, 3 minute long question I just gave you. We're going to talk about that after the break. Call in 404-892-2703. Get you involved in the conversation. News and Talk 1380 WAOK.